last name thing. How about that?
So since we're directing this webcast at an audience of both experienced and inexperienced voice actors, one of the most popular questions I like to ask is, where did you start?
Well, Aaron, I started a long time ago, actually. I started basically acting. Long before I ever even imagined such a thing as voice acting, I had always loved acting and performing on stage and on camera. So I've been acting since I was very, very young. And what I found is that most of the voice actors that I know that have been in the business for a long time, one thing we all have in common is that we have a real vast background in acting. Not just voice, not just like imitating funny characters or doing cartoony voices, but acting, playing characters on stage and on screen. So that was how I started acting. And then, of course, about 15 years ago, a friend of mine in Houston invited me to audition for a voice acting company in Houston called ADV Films that dubbed Japanese anime, and it never really occurred to me before that to try it, but I tried it, and I got cast, and then just kind of kept getting cast. So it was really quite a blessing, quite a gift out of nowhere. I never imagined that I would ever be doing what I'm doing.
All right. Now, this happened before the days of YouTube, where voice actors could simply audition for fan dubs and build on their demo reel and resume. So would you say that jump from amateur status to professional status has gotten easier in the past decade?
Actually, I would say no. I would say that it's gotten harder because as anime and animation, video games, voice acting in general has become more and more mainstream and more popular. You've got more and more people wanting to be in it, wanting to do it, and that makes the competition steeper and more difficult. And so I would say no. I don't think it's made it easier. Now, what I would say is that there are certainly more opportunities in amateur productions to do voice acting work, but when it comes to going from amateur to professional, I would say it's harder because there's more competition now.
All right. Now, my understanding is that most professional voice actors would typically go to Los Angeles to pursue their voiceover career, but you went to Texas, which I understand is the building block for those interested in obtaining a job with Funimation.
Well, let me clarify, Aaron. Make no mistake, I didn't go anywhere to become a voice actor. As I said earlier in the first question, I didn't go with any intention of seeking out to become a voice actor. I was working at a company writing music for video and film, and I was doing some independent video production work and music work, and I was encouraged to audition for a place in Houston, Texas. I did not move to Houston. I did not go to Texas with the intention and the plan to become a voice actor. I just happened to be living there, and that just happened to be where ADV was in Houston. And after working with ADV and voicing a lot of their shows for a few years, I then made contact with Funimation in Dallas, and they invited me to come up and start doing some voice work for them. That's how I got into voice acting. And while it's true that there is probably the most opportunity in Los Angeles, there is certainly a ton of opportunity in Dallas and Houston, some in New York, some in Vancouver, Canada, which is up in your neck of the woods, I believe. And
Vancouver.
Yeah. So to say, why did I go to Texas, going to Texas to become a voice actor, that's not really the case. I did not go to Texas to become a voice actor. I was already in Texas working professionally as an actor and music producer, writer, arranger, video producer, director, and then I just got an opportunity while I was living there.
And so you have quite a bit of experience with Funimation. I'm
Oh yeah, a large amount. I've done over 200 different animated series and video games, and probably 70% of them have been with 60 to 70% of them have been with companies in Texas.
all right. Now, I'm assuming that Funimation typically doesn't bring in a lot of voice actors based outside of their home in Texas.
No, actually, they don't do that at all. And I was living in Houston at the time, and of course, Houston is only a handful of hours from Dallas. And they told me that if I wanted to come up and do some work with them, if I was willing to come up to Funimation on my own expenses, on my own expense, then they would love to have me do some work with them. And so I started going up to Dallas, covering my own travel expenses to go up there, because it is very, very, very atypical. In fact, it is very rare for any company, whether it's in LA or Dallas or Houston or New York, there really aren't any companies that will fly in actors to voice characters in show. It's just pointless, because you've got plenty of talent locally right where you are. You know what I mean?
Right.
Why would I cast somebody, if I was going to direct something in LA, why would I cast somebody that lived in Texas?
So
obviously there are plenty of people in Los Angeles that I could find to play a role. So in my case, I had to make it easy. I had to put myself on the same level with anybody that lived in Dallas near Funimation. I had to make it as easy for Funimation to use someone like me that did not live right there in Dallas as it would be to use somebody that did live there.
So when somebody, let's say, so when somebody wants to work for Funimation, basically they're going to have to go there on their own expense. And
Absolutely. That is the hard, cold truth. And that's not just Funimation. That's any company.
Right.
There are companies out here. I'll give you an example, Aaron. I had been voice acting for probably 9 years and had 100 shows to my credit, including Full Metal and Dragon Ball Z. And yet I could not get I could not get a studio in Los Angeles to cast me, because I didn't live in Los Angeles. It didn't even matter that I had 3 pages of IMDb credits and played all of these characters. That didn't even matter. They weren't going to cast somebody that was not readily locally available. So if they're not going to cast somebody who's got that kind of professional experience and credits, then chances of them casting somebody who has no real experience is highly unlikely.
So let's take a look at that, because, for example, I'm based out of Vancouver, as you know, and there's I got voiceover friends who are based out of Vancouver, and many people want to pursue a sort of career in voiceover that they can only obtain working out of Los Angeles. So I'm under the impression that many of the production companies that film in that record out of Los Angeles, how do they get the people up north involved in that?
Give me an example.
Well, let's take a look at Square Enix, for example. They do a lot for Final Fantasy, and Blizzard Entertainment does a lot for World of Warcraft. So do they only find talent based out of Los Angeles? Like, what happens when somebody out of North America, out of Canada or New York or Florida or someplace like Nebraska wants to get involved in that? Do they have to go down to Los Angeles, or can they find an agent local to them who would send them?
Again, Aaron, I know that this is probably not what a lot of people want to hear, but this is the reality. And the reality is that why would I cast somebody in Nebraska when I have 1,000 voice actors in Los Angeles?
Right.
That's just a simple fact, right?
Yeah.
If I'm a director and I have a responsibility to a studio, let's say Viz. Let's say Viz comes to me. Okay, here you go. You ready, Aaron?
Yeah. Role play.
I have a studio, let's say hypothetical. I have a studio here in Los Angeles, and Viz comes to me and says, "We have this anime series called whatever, Purple Blanket. We have this anime series called Purple Blanket. We want to dub it into English, and we want to hire your studio to do it. We want you to hold auditions, and we want you to cast it, and we want the thing recorded in a month and done."
Right.
Now, Aaron, do you really think I'm going to start looking around the entire country for people that don't even live here, who could not come right into my studio and record at the drop of a hat? Do you really think that I'm gonna cast them when I've got Lord knows how many thousands of voice actors right here in Los Angeles that are dying to get into the business?
Yeah, that makes absolute sense.
Of course not. It doesn't. Of course not. It's completely unrealistic because all of these studios, Aaron, all of these studios are on deadlines. They have budgets, and they have deadlines, and their goal is to meet a certain budget. Well, that means they can't fly anybody in, and why would they when they've got 1,000 voice actors right here?
Yeah.
And that also means they can't wait for somebody to fly in from Florida to record their part. They've got a timeline and a budget. They've got to get the project done.
Right.
So even in my case, when I was living in Houston, Texas, and I met these studios in Los Angeles, and I said, I would love to audition for your show. They said to me, well, whenever you move to Los Angeles, you let us know, because they've got budgets and timelines that they've got to get these shows done, and they're not about to cast people that, number one, don't live right where they are, right where the studio is, and number two, have very limited experience.
Now, what about like people who don't actually, because some people live in the United Kingdom, Canada, probably Mexico or Australia, let's say. How does, because they can't exactly move to the United States because the United States has immigration laws. So that means, how do they get around that?
Well, I think you're asking me a question to which the answer is obvious, Aaron.
Right.
You have to go where the work is.
Right.
There are certain places where certain kinds of work is done. If I wanted to be an orange farmer, I would probably move to Florida. If I wanted to be a country western singer, I would probably move to Nashville. You see where I'm going with this?
Yes.
There are certain places in the world where certain kind of things happen. And while it is true that I suppose it's possible, in fact, I'm sure that there are studios in London that record voiceovers with British dialect actors. I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure they're in London. The problem is that that's not where the bulk of the work is done. And you might get cast in something there, but then again, you might not. And, I sympathize for people that live in the United Kingdom or live in whatever and want to be a voice actor, but if that's something you really, 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 really have a